What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Sucker Punch and Sly Cooper. So I want this to be the start of at least a two-part video series I'll be doing here the next couple of days. I want to look at the options for Sucker Punch, which I did in just one video, right, where it's basically Sly, Infamous, another Ghost game, or a new IP. I kind of want to take those ideas and make them their own video, and I thought what better place, of course, to start with than Sly Cooper. So let's start with Sly, and then we'll do Infamous and the other ones as the days go. And the thing with Sly, you would think, and I've been saying this, the last week or two, for how much of a diehard, for how many videos, for just what this franchise means to me, you would almost think I'd actually be pushing this more. But when I've talked about just my honest opinion of what I think Sucker Punch will do next, Sly really doesn't appear much. I will say, I think the odds of Sucker Punch doing Sly Cooper is more than doing Infamous. It's just a gut feeling I have that whenever they bring up their lineage, I think Infamous does mean a lot to them, and there was a big jump and all that jazz. But I just really feel it's either like Sly, another Ghost game, or a brand new IP. I'd really, of the four, I'd almost whittle out Infamous, even though I think Infamous maybe makes the most sense for them to go back into, but we'll talk about that in a future video. For Sly, the biasness from me is there to say, of course I want them to do it, right? The realist in me, and here's kind of where I want to go with this, right? Why wouldn't it work? Okay, let's kind of start there. We can do the other stuff in a second. Why wouldn't it work? I think from a pure optic standpoint, now I know art is art, and hopefully Sucker Punch is allowed, truthfully, to be able to do whatever they want, right? If they want to go to PlayStation and say, we want to make a new Sly Cooper game, right? That's what we want to do next. I would like to believe that they are told yes, not, well, you have to prove it, or, well, here's all of the list of things you have to do before you do a Sly. I would like to believe that they could just do it. But it does kind of start there in my line of thinking of why it wouldn't work. Your Sucker Punch, you haven't made a Sly game in 20 years. We've heard the whole 10% thing, right? 10% of the company would be really excited to do a Sly Cooper game. Now, again, that really got taken out of context really badly, I feel like, online. All it means is there's only 10% of the people left that did Sly 1 through 3, or, that's kind of what's left there. I don't look at it as a huge negative. I think if they chose to do a Sly Cooper game, they'd be totally cool with it, and the rest of them can kind of jump in. I believe going into Ghost of Tsushima, they were told, okay, well, here's kind of the things you should be either reading or watching, to get yourself into that atmosphere. They can do it. They can be willed into, making a new Sly Cooper game. But I do think it starts with, okay, the image of Sucker Punch is that they just did 2 open world games, 2, kind of historical spins. They used it to a degree, but they also kind of did their own thing with history, right? And they made these, deeply impactful, really big, samurai type thing. I just feel going from that to going back to Sly Cooper, there is something special. I mean, the pro of it is kind of returning to your roots, right? It's not the first game they ever made, but it's really returning to what made them Sucker Punch, to what probably originally put them in the eyes of PlayStation, to keep their... I don't think it happened until after Infamous 1, but, I imagine, the eyes started to be on them around Sly 1, 2, 3. So there is something kind of poetic about that, to be honest with you, kind of returning to your roots and going back to something that is probably a little bit more simple, but I guess, okay, in that is also kind of the con. What they've done now is so expansive, right? Multiplayer mode coming to it, but just, you think about what makes Ghost of Yotei probably the most special, right? What is the real special thing about it? To me, it's the open world design. It's the beauty of it, yes, but it's also it's so big, but it's also so well done. There's so much in there to get you from point A to point B, and there's a lot of substance in it. And you can see the Sly Cooper influence there, okay? And I might even make a video on it because I feel kind of passionate about that. You can see not just Easter eggs of Sly, but you can draw a direct line from Sly Cooper to Ghost of Yotei. I really think you could. But the question I would say, and I'm saying in this video, right, is can you go backwards? Because you kept a lot of that energy And a lot of the structure is kind of similar to Sly. It's still there. You can still see it if you were into Sly Cooper. But could you really go backwards? And I guess, I keep saying it, but like a more direct way is like Sly is just a selection of missions, right? It's a semi-open world, pretty small, even at the biggest of times, even like say Sly 4 or Sly 3, with the most activities you can do and the biggest semi-open world thing you can do. It's very small, and it's a collection of them, right? It's whatever, 8 missions, in each, and you're going through and you're doing your thing. Can you downsize from Ghost to something like Sly? I think, by the way, it's not like, well, it's impossible or I hate the idea. No, again, I want to say it out loud. My biasness is, of course, like, just please do it. I really wouldn't like anything more than, them to go back to it. But I don't want to set the expectations too high. And again, when I think realistically about what makes the most sense for them, I think, probably a third Ghost game or a brand new IP. Some of the other things, by the way, working against this, Nate Fox has done actually a couple interviews now, and the guy has a wealth of knowledge. He's not like the hot name that like some of the other people within PlayStation are, but the guy is a legend. He really is. And he the way he talks and just what he's saying, I think, is actually kind of impactful. One of the things they've stressed multiple times is origin stories. They love origin stories, and it's why they did Atsu in the first place in Ghost of Yotei. The thing is, here's the thing: you can't do a Sly Cooper game without Sly. Having a name and the name of the game being attached to a character, like, that's kind of what almost screws you, I guess, for those type of games. If you ever want to try something new, you're held back more, like Uncharted, right? It's not called Nathan Drake. It's called Uncharted. Now, Nathan Drake is very much tied into it, but the name of the game is not, Crash Bandicoot. You need to have Crash, and it needs to be the main character. Spyro. You think about those games, right, with the character name as the game title. So I think about that, where it's like, well, if you really want to keep doing origin things and just telling new stories with new characters, if you do Sly, like, could you do maybe something with his son, or like have a son, and do maybe? I've thought about that. I think that'd be an interesting one, because it's almost like a Nathan Drake and Cassie type thing, but it's with animals, and it's a little bit different. You probably can't go nearly as dark. So, definitely in that way, well, you can't take Sly out. That's definitely a good thing, right? We don't want any character assassinations in that way. But that's a big deal. It's something that I've kind of gone back to in my head of like, well, maybe why wouldn't they want to do it? Or why wouldn't PlayStation? Why? I guess also specifically, and hopefully it's them that gets to choose yes or no, right? I think there's like the downsizing of the world and of the game. I think there's maybe like enthusiasm within the studio to do something like that. There's origin story. Now, let me give you, because, a lot of it's actually been kind of negative so far. I want to throw out a couple things of, I mentioned the poeticness kind of it. Let's go there, and let's go through some of the positives of maybe why they could do something like this. So again, something kind of poetic of maybe ending where you're starting. Now, ending, Sucker Punch shouldn't shut down or anything, but some of the leads there, they're entering their 50s. They don't have too many years left in the industry. They also don't have too many games left, right? Like, they know games take 4, 5, 6 years to make. Some of these people that I consider legends in Sucker Punch that have been there since the beginning, they might have 2 to 4 games left, and that's it, right? So you got to be very selective, and maybe they want to go back and do something, with that franchise that, again, didn't start them, but kind of started them. There's also, you could bring in, well, what about the push of, well, like, did Astrobot do anything for PlayStation? Did it teach it any lessons? Like, I think there's something there, and I think that, if Sucker Punch can't do it, somebody else can. I am also, by the way, kind of ignoring the rumors that there is a Sly game. Like, if that happens, if that doesn't happen, I'm just kind of sticking with Sucker Punch in particular here. Although, that might be a thing, right? Like, if there really, truly is a Sly Cooper game being made by some, like, spin-off studio, you're not going to touch it as Sucker Punch, right? Like there's just no need to do something like that because it's art. You realistically, you're not going to make two Sly Cooper games at the same time, right? So I guess just to throw that in. Another thing is, so we've had a couple Sly name drops, right? There was the one that was talking about whether we go back to Sly or we make another Ghost. And I had talked about that in the video, and I had said, I think he was just saying the two extremes. I don't think it was necessarily a hint that like Sly is 50-50, right? That literally the two options for them is a Sly game or a new Ghost game. I look at it more like he's using the extremes of, okay, well, whether we go all the way back to Sly or whether we stay with what we're doing now, it's the two polar opposite. You know what I mean? I think that's why he worded it like that. But you do have that, right? You kind of have that name drop. I also was watching the Nate Fox thing with PlayStation Access. There was a really nice, beautiful music in the background of that video as well. There's a really nice interview done with him over there that went through the whole history of his time, at Sucker Punch. And he did the voice impressions of Sly, Bentley, and Murray, which was fun and funny. But one thing he said that I thought was interesting, he said, when he writes, because he's a writer there, right? And he wrote Sly, and he writes other things as well. When he wrote, he would really kind of hear the characters almost speaking to him, in his head, which I imagine, by the way, is how some writers do it. But he said at the end of that kind of monologue, he said, sometimes they still do. And I don't think I'll ever forget that now for the rest of my life and the rest of the time that Sly is a thing and the internet's a thing, because it was just, again, I don't want to read into it 100% and say, oh, but that means that there's a Sly game coming. But I do find it meaningful that the guy who wrote, that's still there, has a lot of power. Really, he pushed them to do Ghost, by the way, in the first place, okay? So he has a lot of power there. And he writes Sly, all this stuff, and he talks about, these voices speaking to him, in terms of writing out these characters of Sly, Bentley, Murray, and then he throws in, like, sometimes they still do. And I thought, at worst, it's like, it's cool that they're still kind of talking to you. Now, depending on how you say that, you might kind of come off crazier than you want to be. But, no, I mean, all jokes aside, at worst, that is still kind of cool. You know what I mean? That these characters are still a part of his life, and he's still maybe sometimes walking a dog, seeing something. He maybe thinks, like, oh, what would Sly do in that situation? Or Bentley Murray. Like, it's still a part of him. Those characters are still a part of him. That's at worst. Now, at best, you could take that to mean he, like, has that energy for it. Like, the characters still speak to him, and maybe one day he's sleeping, and he wakes up, and he says, you know what? There's a story, and I'm not really a writer, but I've heard, and I think all of us have kind of heard, we've probably heard so many stories like that before, right? Where a person gets that kind of inspiration, and they say, you know what? There's a story there. There's something I want to say, even maybe it's been a long time, but there's something there now. And I mean, hearing the characters talking to you, like, yeah, maybe one day you think of, oh, I can think of a Sly 4 or a Sly 5, whatever. I can think of one just and have it roll off, The one thing I want to throw in just to kind of end this is, and I've seen this a lot online, I've seen other Sly accounts talk about it, I just want to say it as well. There's a weird pressuring situation going on, and look, like I'm fine with like the jokes and like the casual pressing, to be honest with you, but I think a lot of people are looking to Sucker Punch to like solve the failures of the past that were not theirs, and it's not fair. It's not, and it's kind of weird, to be honest with you, because it's like, I get it. There's a sense of me getting it, and there's a sense of, again, I feel like you can politely ask and be into Sly, on social media, and even get Sucker Punch involved in that. But, like, what happened. What happened with Sly 4 happened, and it's not on Sucker Punch to fix to fix it. It just, they don't need to do that, because when people say, well, oh, he's trapped in Egypt, and he is, Sly is, it's a terrible fate. But, like, they didn't put him there. If you think about it, and you go through Sly 1 through 3 as a trilogy, one of the all-time perfect trilogies, by the way, they told their story from beginning to end. Like, they told a complete story. And, yeah, you could pick it back up. Like, you can pick up from Sly 3 and literally do another Sly 4 type thing. And here's the thing. If they were to make another Sly, would they do something like that? I think the odds would be high, It's kind of like, well, they created 1 through 3, and you think about Nate Fox, too, the impact that these people had on Sly and the creators of it. You might just ignore that 4 ever happened and pick up after 3. You might do a reboot and pretend like all 3 of them didn't happen, and then also 4 didn't happen, right? But I just want to throw that in. Like, that's not really their problem, to be honest. To them, I mean, they're making games. When they're making Ghost of Yotei, I don't think they're thinking about the fate of Sly Cooper. Okay, to be fair, but even if they are thinking about it, it's not up to them to fix what they didn't do in the first place. Like, yeah, look, if you go into the franchise, whoever is the next one to make a Sly game, if that happens, right? They are tasked with picking the future. They're tasked with, do we want to reboot it? Do we want to go after Sly 3 and pretend like 4 didn't happen? Or do we accept 4 and do we solve that situation and tell our own story? I've said, just as a quick throwaway, I've said I think many times, I really think the quick response, if a Sly game is ever made, is to quickly resolve 4, if that even is a thing, right? If they want to accept 4 as part of the lore, I really think fixing it would be not even like a minor inconvenience on the game, and the game itself would be something totally created by them. I think as new creatives, you're not going to want to make your game, the whole game, just how to get out of a situation that the last game left you in that you didn't even make, okay? That's what I've just always thought. That I know the Egypt thing is a big deal. I think Sly could get out of that situation in 5 minutes, if a new studio did it, if they want to, because it doesn't really matter as much as I think people put weight on it. That's just my quick thoughts on that. Maybe we can talk about that more in future videos. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.